Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about how to make a custom interactive animation, something similar to what you're seeing on the screen right now. So let's get into it. So the basic concept of these kinds of animations is when you have two individual shapes and you want them to interact, but you don't want to animate them individually, so that you can use one shape layer to trigger an animation of another shape layer. So for this you need two shapes. So let's have a normal button kind of shape here. So I'm just going to create a very simple shape, just a rectangle. Let's change the color of that so that it's a little bit more clear. Alright, we got that. And then let's name this button. Then we can have another shape layer. So since the mouse pointer wouldn't make sense, I'm just gonna create a circle for now. We'll just take a bit more time to create a mouse pointer. So let's name this mouse. Alright, now you've got your two shapes. Go to Effects and Presets and search for Transform. Now drag and drop the transform effect onto the button layer. And the reason we're doing this in the transform effect is because you can individually move the shape layer afterwards in the normal layer adjustments, like dimension adjustment submenu here. And you can specifically use the transform effect that we applied to trigger the animation. So once this shape layer comes on top of this shape layer, the button shape layer, it can have like a dimension effect, like either move up or scale up or reduce or increase opacity, rotation and things like that. So all the options and adjustments that you've got in the transform effect right here, you can trigger them by using this mouse layer. So that is the idea. Once you have the transform effect applied to the button layer, you can press Alt and left click on the stopwatch icon next to position, and that brings up the expressions panel for the position, and you can paste this script, this expression. So I'm going to explain to you what this expression does, but if you want to skip the video from this point, you can feel free to do that. But I'm going to explain to you what this expression does exactly. So this pointer line here, it defines the it references the mouse pointer layer that we have defined here. Because we are writing the expression in the button layer, and this is the trigger, so it just fetches that layer to this expression. And the hoverStart and the hoverEnd acts as a range per se to when the animation should be triggered and ended. So for example, if I put the value at 100 here, the hoverStart value at 100, you gotta get a lot more closer to the button layer for the animation to trigger. So now this is automatic. I'm not doing anything. This is an automatic animation triggered from this pink color mouse pointer layer. And the hoverEnd, it acts as a limit to how close the shape layer should be when the animation stops. So let me make it a little bit more clearer with a few placeholders. So as you can see, I have shown the anchor point of the button layer at the center of the button in red, and I have defined these values of the hoverEnd and the hoverStart by these two red lines. So this is hoverStart, this is hoverEnd. So when you have it at 300 and the hoverEnd at 100, the animation triggers from around this point and it ends 100 values after that. So if you want the hoverEnd to be at 300 as well, this is what happens. So then the hoverEnd would be, let me change the color of this. Alright, so here right now, earlier the hoverEnd ended at here, but now it just keeps going until the mouse layer hits the center of the anchor point, so until it comes really close, almost on top of it. So this is much smoother and it increases, it takes the hover up much higher. But what it does is the range of the hover movement, it just increases. Like there's a lot of area here to move. So that's what it does. So say reduce this to somewhere around half of 300, so 150. So ideally, since the hover start and the hover end it was in these points when it was 300, right now the hover end should end at somewhere there. So let's see what happens. Right, there we go. See, now you have enough room of a proximity to move your mouse pointer closer up here to the original anchor point, and it stays on the same position without jittering and moving around. So it's all according to your preference, but pretty much that is a range. And the max value here is the maximum value that the hover animation happens, the value of the position that it goes, like how high up it hovers, because we have applied this expression to the position. So now we have referenced the layer, and we have defined the range of which the hover starts and ends, and we have given a max value where the hover of the animation, the button, should end. So it is like how tall or how high up the animation would go, the animation of the button. And what this length does is we have defined a length here, and we have defined a clamp here. So what general command for this is, for length, is calculating 2 points. So point 1 and point 2. So here we have defined point 1 as the anchor point of the current layer, which is the button, and here as point 2 we have defined the anchor point of the mouse layer. So it calculates the distance between the mouse pointer layer and the button layer. So here in clamp we have defined a range of where the effect should start and end, so as to restrict the movements of the animation and the trigger. So the general standard command of the clamp is value, minimum and maximum. So here as the value we have defined the hover start minus L. As the minimum we have defined it 0, and as the maximum we have defined it as hover end. So the clamp is how closer, the range of how close and how far away the mouse pointer layer should be to the button layer to create the animation. So hover start minus L, what it does is to start the animation smoothly, rather than just instead of just like reaching the hover start point and immediately going up to the maximum value of the hover. So this command makes the animation much more smoother, so it gradually increases. So what this command does is a bit of math. So here at this point we have calculated that the hover start is 300 pixels away and the hover end is 150 pixels away. So here, if the value of the mouse pointer anchor point is further than 300 pixels away, there would be no animation or trigger happening, because L hover start is 300 and L would be more than 300. So the result would be lesser, like it would be a negative value. So this would be like 500, let's say, and this would, hover start would be 300, so that would be negative 200. So that means the animation should not start yet. So once it reaches the 300 point and it increases further, L becomes lesser than 300. So now the resulting value would be a positive value, because it's reduced from the 300, which is hover start. So that sort of makes the animation much more smoother, like it makes it go up the closer we get. If we don't have this, it would abruptly, when we reach the 300 hover start point, it would just go up all of a sudden. So that's what the clamp does. And the hover end is the maximum point. So when it reaches the hover end point, it just stops. So the hover end is at 150 pixels, and that's when the animation should end. So that's the range that has been defined by the clamp. And the value here at the bottom defines the animated values of the position. So X values should be 0 obviously, because we are moving the button layer just on the y-axis because we have chosen the position adjustment to create our animation today. And C times max value means the final animation value. So this defines the final calculation to how high up the button should move. So if this max value here that we have defined as 2, if it's lower, it would obviously move lower. So this is like a range of how high up the button animation should happen, so how high up the button should move. So this can change as well. Let's put it to 0.5, and now it would be, the max value should be less, so it would be, the animation would be much more shorter. The movement of the hover would be much more shorter. So for the sake of the animation, I'm just going to keep it at 2. So that is how high up the animation would go. So the final calculation there is that it multiplies the maximum value by the range, so that we can have a final value of how high up the animation would happen and how much it would go up based on how closer the mouse shape layer is to this. So that's how this animation works. So in this example here, I have used something similar, but instead of the position adjustment, I have used the opacity adjustment, and the expression is pretty much similar, except a few values such as the maximum opacity here and the final equation. So besides that, pretty much everything is the same, and it just addresses the opacity values. The closer it gets to the button, it increases in opacity, and the star galaxy layer that you can see here is a different composition. So it's a very simple thing. All you have to do is just this composition is separately a different composition entirely, and I just increased and decreased the opacity there by the expression. So instead of animating the opacity of the galaxy layer here, I've automated it. So thank you very much for watching the tutorial. Thank you for sticking around. I guess I'll see you guys in another tutorial.